Hello, and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy Podcast. My name is Jed, and we are reading the Phaedo together. It has been quite a journey. Here's a little title screen for people watching. It has been quite a journey for us. We've done a lot of recaps before this final section of the text, a section where we did read quickly through and was very confusing, had a lot of metaphors, had a lot of Greek mythology terminology to it, and it was very, very confusing. And Joe Biden said,
flibbity-gibbity nonsense.
And he said, after reading it,
What in the hell heck are we talking about here?
He said, what in the hell heck are we talking about here?
What in the hell heck are we talking about here?
So we had to do some work. It's good to be puzzled. Part of philosophy is getting puzzled, looking for puzzles, getting confused. If you're getting confused, you are in the game. Now, what do we do when we're confused? We read it again. As Socrates says, the right practice of learning, the fancy Greek word is philomathesis, is to keep repeating this doctrine. Keep reading this text. Keep talking about it, keep thinking about it. So that's what we did. We repeated it. We went through it again. How much did we learn? What did we learn? Did our learning shine light on what we have learned? In other words, when we go back again, after having been reading, after having learned, can we see there's a structure going on here? Can we see more about what he was doing the whole time? Does our learning of the logos bring to light what was there the whole time that we weren't able to see until we have done some learning? Now, of course, one of our questions is, what is the logos? We are working with a hypothesis that it's the paradigm, that the reason we can go beyond opinions and beliefs to actual understanding is because there is something understandable about our reality. It is intelligible. We can understand it. If we can understand it, it must be following a certain pattern with terms that are ordered in a hierarchy with relations between them. In other words, there is an understandable pattern to reality, and if it's the archetype or paradigm, then it should be in other things. So I learn and teach music, and I'm a guitarist. So when I teach my students, I point out, if we pluck one string, we can hear a note. But hidden within that note is many other notes. They're called in music, they're called overtones. The reason a guitar string sounds different from a piano string or a violin string is the interplay with all these other notes that are there. They are there, but they are hard to hear. And as we learn more about the theory, and as we bring to the listener's attention by playing those extra notes that are there, then when we come back around to play that first note again, hopefully the listener, if they've been paying attention, but the musician too who's been learning, will see what was there in a new way. It was always there. All these overtones were always there. All these relationships, these terms and relationships were already there. But having learnt some music theory or having played them in a melody in a song, we bring the listener or musician's attention to what was there the whole time. That when we come back around home again, we see what was there the whole time in a new way. This is also called ousia, the ability to turn back around to the start and see what was there the whole time. This is also the dialectic. We've been looking at the four parts of the dialectic, the structure that Socrates has been giving us clues and used the word once, which is often a clue. If it's a significant term, that the whole text rests upon. It might only be used once in the text. It's a technique that he uses. So the dialectic itself, definition, demonstration, division, and then synthesis, analysis. It goes back to the start. So this repeating, going back to the start, seeing if our logos, our learning of the logos, has brought what was there the whole time into light. We are becoming like the paradigm. If the paradigm is the dialectic and the logos together, then we are learning the logos. We are turning back around. We are doing it. And Socrates has been saying it is by likeness that we purify and prepare ourselves for the initiation into the higher dimensions or realities. Now, likeness, because, as the quote says, it is lawful that the pure be with the pure, and the impure cannot be with the pure. By likeness. And of course, at the start of the text, Socrates was being described as like a great daemon. So this returning with our learning makes us like reality itself. And like the paradigm. If the paradigm is not just understandable but knowable, then that likeness can prepare us to experience it. Intelligible doesn't just mean understandable, it also means knowable. This is important, balloons, because we don't just want to go beyond beliefs and opinions to understanding. We also want to verify our understanding with something called noesis or nous. What we loosely call knowledge in English, because we don't have a word for this. Many translators use the word knowledge, but we are specifically meaning directly experiencing it, which means we have to separate from our physical senses that see the physical world, the world of becoming. It's always in change, to see the realm of being. So that requires a separation of the soul from the body. Socrates says, by the way, isn't that what we call death? So philosophy is the practice of dying and being dead. However, we are doing it through understanding as well, which means we might be able to apply it artfully. So not just the practice, but the art of death and dying. So we're learning about what philosophy really is. And what is the realm of being? Well, we've been talking about it. That's where the selfers live, or the ousiers, beauty itself. So we call them selfers because we say, because in the Greek they're called self-beauty, self-justice. Self-beauty, self-justice, all of the things that govern our world, all of the higher causes, the cause for beautiful things, self-beauty, the cause for equal things, self-equal. Hey, life itself, existence itself, being itself, self-being. They all have an existence, a higher existence, and being higher within the creation of reality, we say it has a higher metaphysical existence, but it's also more causal. The higher things, or the primary things, cause the latter things. Beauty itself causes beautiful things. The realm of being causes the realm of becoming. So this is also what Socrates gave us a hint about. Here's a title again. To go from loving learning to loving learning about being is the transition from philomathesis to philosophia, philosophy. So philosophy must be a kind of learning directed towards being. That involves the logos, that involves the structure of the dialectic, that involves understanding being. That's called dianoia, understanding being, and involves verifying it through your direct experience, noesis, apprehending that ideal, but also being able to use it in conversations to benefit yourself and others. All of those things together we can say is an art. Socrates calls it the art of logos. So now we have two ways of defining philosophy: the art and practice of death and dying, or the mastery of the art of the logos. Now, he also mentioned all of these things that we apply our learning and dialectic to, the true practice of philosophy, have a hyparxis. They're all joined to the same head, to use Socrates' language from the text. He calls that self-ousia. By the way, all of these hypotheses or conclusions, all of these summaries are from the text itself. We are reading without interpretation, without adding our own opinions or leaving out what's there, which is itself making us more like the mind of the reader. We don't read so we can reflect our ignorance back to us. We want to change our mind to become better, to grow, to evolve, to discover the nature of reality, not to hold on to our ignorance that we were given in our upbringing about reality. That's stupid.
Flibbity-gibbity nonsense.
We don't want to do that.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
Don't want to eat a monkey.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
Thank you, Joe Rogan. So, becoming like the mind of Socrates, that we are learning about in the text, by reading without interpretation. Not only that, if we are separating our soul from our physical senses, but we can still apprehend a different dimension, what is that other sense? That is called ousia, which is the same or like self-ousia, which is the hyparxis or the apex of all the beings. So we are awakening our ousia, which is like the realm of being itself. So we are doing likeness. And this reviewing, turning around, applying the art of the logos back on itself, this reviewing of the text is itself ousia. So this returning, repeating, reviewing is ousia, which is like the eye of the soul, the third eye, which is like being. So we're bringing it all together through likeness. And not just imitation or opinions, we are developing our minds. So another way, some people call philosophy the jnana yoga, or the spiritual yoga or method through the mind. We can call philosophy, we've been playing with the term, philodianoia. Because dianoia, the understanding which involves the logos and the dialectic, directed towards being, seems to be what wisdom is as a virtue. So wisdom takes a little bit more work to figure out, and we're going to jump into the Republic next. To learn the virtues, including wisdom. But dianoia seems to really hit the nail on the head. Philodianoia. That's a better way or another way of describing philosophy. So that when we awaken ousia, we discover the realm of being, we have the art of the logos because our method was dianoia. So we can recognize where we are, we can go into it in a deeper level, we can see the significance. It's not scary because we've purified our false beliefs about what it's like to be out of the body, what death is. A lot of people fear death, but we've done the work to purify our ignorance. Socrates is demonstrating how we should do that because he is singing the kind of song, engaged in the dialectic to remove the cultural and religious false beliefs and fears about death and being dead that Simmias and Cebes have, just like we have. Purification, while also giving us what we need to perfect. So this is moving from sickness to health. This is moving from health to excellence. Purification, purifying from our problems or fate, perfecting ourselves towards our destiny. That's the game. And that's the art of the logos. Now, if that's what we are getting and we are becoming like Socrates, we can hypothesize that's where Socrates is. He has told us, yeah, I've experienced this. I've been initiated. I've gone through this. And I understand it. And look at me use it artfully to benefit my friends. Look at me use it artfully to benefit you 2,500 years later. Time isn't really an issue for me. And I'm inviting you to join me there, where I'm going. I'm going to a place where people go when they've completed their cycles of reincarnation. He knows this, and he understands it, and he can use his knowledge and understanding artfully to benefit. He has the art. So, we talk about people saying, we can never know what happens when you die. Wrong. Nobody's ever told us, nobody's ever experienced it and come back to tell us. Wrong. Socrates is. Now, there's a reason why it's not being talked about, which is why a lot of people don't think it's a thing and say nobody's ever come back to tell us about it. As Mindy Mandel points out, yeah, a lot of people have. Have you gone on YouTube? A lot of people have had near-death experiences. Now, of course, they can be dismissed. Oh, they're just crackpots. They don't know what they experienced. But Socrates avoids that because he's very, very smart. He's called the father of Western thought. Famously, it's said of Socrates, everything is but a footnote to Socrates. But we are understanding why. We are all footnotes to Socrates because we dropped what he told us to do. This podcast, this community, we are picking it up. We're picking up what was dropped. So yeah, we are a footnote because we're not in the actual text. So those people who say, oh yeah, everything is but a footnote to Socrates, they don't, probably, I'm guessing they don't understand what that means. We can find a cool way of understanding that. Yeah, of course. If it's not talked about, then how would famous atheists like Ricky Gervais and Richard Dawkins know that somebody has gone back? Of course, they can dismiss the near-death experience, people as being loonies. You can't dismiss Socrates. Very, very smart. Intelligent. Perfected. Why? He's perfected the art of the logos. It wasn't a near-death experience that was happened by luck. He practiced it. He developed an understanding. He purified his false beliefs. And he developed an understanding of what was happening, and he practiced getting there often. Because that's what real philosophy is. Now, there's a reason why a lot of people don't know this, and a lot of people aren't talking about it. We have been figuring that out too, because when we're understanding what philosophy is, we also have to understand what it isn't. That's the dialectic. What it is and what it isn't. What if philosophy does exist? What if it's not real? And in that side B, we are recognizing a lot of things that we are very familiar with in our world. It's only opinion. It's not real. You can't know it. All you can do is debate people. There's no dialectic. There's no understanding. You develop opinions, Kant's opinions, Hegel's opinions. There's a lot of gatekeeping. You can't talk about philosophy until you've memorized a lot of stupid opinions by stupid people. And by the way, there's a lot of not reading the text. You often, when you learn philosophy in schools, you read interpreters. This is this guy's opinion of Socrates. This is his interpretation of Plato. So you don't even learn how to read. Now there's a reason for that. The counter-attack against Socrates. Whenever a new idea comes in, There is some force behind the false or the ignorance that we were attached to that tries to defend its own way of being. So when Socrates is saying, hey, you need to go beyond a lover of opinion, philodoxia, beyond lovers of fighting, philonikos, to actual understanding, dianoia, that is inclusive, everyone can play. You have to purify your false beliefs, encourage people to play this game, to develop the art of the logos, verify it through knowledge. Understanding and knowledge is objective, so who cares what Kant and Hegel think? Know the truth. After finding the truth, like medicine, after knowing the art, you can diagnose Kant and see where he fell down, see his problem. You can diagnose Hegel and see how far up his art of the art of the logos did he get. But that's stupid to learn without first learning the paradigm. You can't diagnose patients unless you know the art. So of course, if Ricky Gervais he'd studied philosophy, I think, at college, of course he's going to be confused because they don't teach the paradigm. They teach there isn't a paradigm. Socrates knew this 2,500 years ago. He says the people who are going to claim to be experts, the ones who claim to be wise and have understanding, they're going to say what makes them wise and with understanding is they are going to reject dianoia. They're going to reject understanding. It's all just opinion. No one can really understand the truth. So we're just going to have groups of people around the world in different opinions. And maybe they'll start religions. Maybe they'll start political parties. Maybe they'll kill and fight each other. Yeah, welcome to the blood-soaked pages of history. Fighting, division between people. Socrates said, yeah, this will cause war and civil discord. People will love riches, and so they'll fight to make themselves rich because they love their desires more than they love dianoia. So they'll reject dianoia. They'll reject reality being intelligible. There's no truth. Nobody can experience other dimensions. That's crazy. What about Socrates? Don't know the guy. And they'll reject the art. How to encourage, nurture, persuade gently people to join this because it's for everyone. Instead, it's debating, it's gatekeeping. I did some philosophy at college, and I had a lot of good questions, and they were met with scorn and mockery and ignored. It's bullshit. And I was taught Plato as a Republic as a political text, which is an extreme joke. Because it's not, he specifically said, this is not a political text. It's a metaphor for understanding our soul. But we didn't read it. We read interpretations from the people who the college liked. I like his opinion, so bound together by opinions. Now, Socrates knew all this, he's telling us all this, and we can read it. One of the reasons we can read it is because we have an actual translation. In the last 5 years, we've had a translation with the actual Greek. So all of the puzzles, all of the real information that is sprinkled through as puzzles, we have never been able to read before. The keys to unlock the text have not even been there because it's been mistranslated. Now, of course, as we're saying, with an art, we're not blaming people, but we can understand the causes. And we've done that a little bit. We've read the Greek and we've compared it to the Loeb or the Fowler translation, which is one of the better ones, which is free on the Perseus website. And we've recognized, oh, this is Christian language. Oh, this isn't the word for understanding. He's completely missed the mark. Maybe because of his lack of understanding of the Greek, maybe because of his religious influences, maybe the cultural influences. So we're understanding why a lot of people don't know about this. But thankfully for us, we don't have to fall into that trap. we can figure it out. We can pick up what he's laying down. So we can get out of that history being a footnote to Socrates and be in the text, join the game. By being like Socrates, like Usia, with the art of the logos. Understand the cause of problems and how to solve them. Understand the cause of excellence or enlightenment and how to reach it. Understand it. Experience it. Go beyond it. And also artfully invite everyone to play. You don't have to be in the team or in the group. You can make groups if you wanted to. This is a philosophy group, this is a Phaedo group, whatever. And you can even give divisions. These people have developed a certain level of mastery, and of course that would be good because those who have mastered the art of the logos and know what actually solves problems and benefits human souls, we should firmly encourage them to take leadership positions in our world. Just as people who have understood the art of medicine, we really want them to be doctors. Those with the greatest mastery of the art of medicine, we want to be doctors. So too, those with the greatest mastery of the art of logos, we want to be in charge of doctors, in charge of society. The things that we reject the art. There is no art of governing. There is no art of religion, or no, let's not use the word religion. That's to do with belief. We're going beyond belief. Belief doesn't have to be true. You can believe anything. Usually that's why people have the same religion as their parents and why there are thousands of religions. It doesn't have to be true. It's not anything to do with truth. But it is a cause of a great many problems that we can't ignore. So, is there an art of spirituality? Is there an art of governing? Is there an art of justice, of beauty? Is there an art of arts? Yes. Socrates is saying absolutely. Not only is there an art of arts that we're calling the logos, it's very, very important that you learn it. If you don't, you'll go down the villain track. You won't know how to judge humans and you'll get betrayed by them, especially loved ones or those dear to you, and you might end up hating all humans or hating reality so bad. But more importantly, if you don't recognize good and bad reasoning with the art of the logos, you might end up hating the logos. And we had an example. Simmias and Cebes followed through trust the arguments of the soul's immortality and reincarnation. But then as soon as they brought up their cultural beliefs, they distrusted themselves, reality, and the logos, the big three. Socrates says we have to be on guard for this. We have to learn the art of the logos. All of us. If we don't, we'll end up hating the logos and siding with those people inside B. There is no understanding, there is no reality, there is no self. Just fighting each other for physical riches. And there's no immortality of the soul, so it doesn't matter how unjust you are. Socrates says, no, you can't escape your injustice. The way that your level of learning of the art of the logos and the level of practice or nurture of that definition and demonstration affects your reincarnation, what happens to your soul, what happens when you go to the next realm, what we're calling the fifth dimension, and then when you how you come back to the third dimension. There is an art. And those of us who master it better, we should firmly encourage them to share their art to benefit all of us here. But for us, it's for our souls. That's secondary. Primarily, it's for our souls. Yes, it's what we need to overcome human problems and reach our excellence. And yes, we have the technology to destroy the human race and our planet. And yes, we are very close to doing that. And yes, many species have gone extinct before us. We could be one of them. And yes, the human race is worth saving, and we do have a role within a greater destiny. But, so yes, the logos, the art of the logo should be taught from day one. That's rational, but it might not happen. But what's important for you is that you learn it, so you can reach reality, so you can do your proper work, so you can escape the cycles of death and rebirth to go into a higher dimension, so you can evolve. Maybe humanity won't evolve from its barbarism. Maybe it will never join the true human race by being rational, the art of the logos. But that doesn't mean that you don't have to. For whatever time you have here, spend it mastering the art of the logos and practicing it, says Socrates. Otherwise, you will have the greatest defect of the soul and you won't reach truth. So, good news for us. We can read it. We can pick up what Socrates laid down. We can pick up where humanity left off. We can go from the footnote to Socrates to actually matching Socrates. And maybe if we do, and he's waiting for us in that sixth dimension outside of time, we can join him where he is right now, waiting for us to be a fellow traveler and guide with the art of the logos, taking with us that learning and the nurturing of it into our soul to go on a greater journey. So maybe if the soul out of the body is the fourth dimension, if the next realm that we have some sort of rewards and punishment of some kind to do with how we lived is the fifth dimension, if you can escape that back and forth between there to go to a higher realm with better men and gods, that's the sixth dimension. And if they're journeying somewhere else, then they're going to a seventh dimension. We want to see all of that and maybe meet Socrates in the sixth, or maybe get to the seventh. Which would mean we have to separate our soul from the body, which means we have to die. Oh, that's okay. We have done the work in removing our fears of death. And it's also okay because we are learning that that's what philosophy is. And our proper function here. The art and practice of death and dying. Many times before our final death. As Dr. Grimes would say, die many times before they bury you. So with all that in mind, that's what we're looking for in the text. We know Socrates has knowledge and understanding and art. So he's speaking from both experience and understanding. So send an email to Ricky Gervais and Richard Dawkins and said, oh, by the way, I came across someone who has experienced death and can't be dismissed as a crackpot and has understood it and has developed or discovered there's an art of it. His name's Socrates. Oh, and now you can read actually what he's saying without the misinterpretation by bad translators who are influenced by religious and political forces. You can read it for yourself. You don't need a professor between you and the text professing the faith. So, of course, that's secondary. We want it for ourselves, and whether or not Dawkins and Gervais comes along, that's up to them. It'd be nice, because his jokes might evolve with his personal evolution. But that's an aside. Often when comedians grow, if they stop evolving and learning, so too does their humor, and they reach a certain age and they start complaining and stop being funny. We don't want that. We want to understand the causes why. Of course, one of those causes is if we don't purify our false beliefs, we can become more firmly entrenched in them. And if we're not learning and challenging ourselves to grow up that ladder of the logos, then we're not seeking excellence. So our other activities will lack that excellence and stop being funny or beautiful or just. But anyway, conversation maybe for another podcast or stream where we apply our understanding of the logos to popular culture to make sense of things that can be confusing in our world. That could be fun. If there's an interest for doing that, I might do that, start a channel like that. There are a few YouTube channels and podcasts that I do enjoy, that people use their intelligence to make sense of the world. I like some of their Majority Report episodes I really like. The Friday Fun Half is my favorite. RM Brown is really good. Some More News YouTube channel is pretty good. Office Hours with Tim Heidecker. Sometimes he shies away from talking about social and political things, but sometimes he doesn't, and he's applying his intelligence and insight to making sense of them, and his humor, which is really, really nice. He's a really funny guy. But, of course, they are skimming the surface of the art of the logos. If they picked up the Phaedo and they read at this level, they could maybe bring it to a higher level. And if there's an interest for this, for us to do this in this podcast, then we could give it a shot, see what it would be like to make sense of the problems using Socrates' art of the logos. He does seem to be able to predict and explain things 2,500 years through time from 2,500 years ago in the past. So it might be worthwhile and it might be fun. But for now, let's see what Socrates is saying at the end of his speech. What's the last thing he's going to communicate to us before he goes to that different dimension? He's already said, hey, if you're a true philosopher, meet me there as fast as you can. Let's do that. Let's do our best to do that. And maybe he's going to give us a path there, or a key to unlock that ability to access that dimension and meet him there. So a lot of questions, and that's important. All these questions we bring with us in our reading. It makes it meaningful, and it might help us unlock hidden mysteries. That's important. We're not reading it for a degree or for course credit. We're reading it because we are genuinely interested in benefiting our souls, ourselves. And we have genuine questions that can bring in that curiosity and openness and enthusiasm and fun. Best game in town.
Wow.
So let's figure it out. Let's do some work. Let's jump in. Here's a little title. Right, so anybody watching along, please feel free to share questions. They can unlock different levels of meaning, different wonder. Part of being in the game is sharing your insights and your questions, and you're welcome to do so on Discord too. We have a Discord channel. And one such question is something that came up yesterday or the day before from Gabe. How come nobody is talking about this? This was a question that I got from him, but really stuck out to me because it's really a good question, and one I have been curious about for a long time, but we're really seeing why that is the case. The kind of reading that we've been doing together in this channel could not have happened before now, simply because we are seeing how perfectly written it is. Maybe not perfect, but amazingly beautifully written. The key words tie into each other. There are puzzles. Like the word wisdom was changed to being, and then that was changed to phronesis. There's a puzzle there. A certain key word, gathering ourselves together, is used at certain points, And if you're not getting the exact Greek, or you can't see the Greek word underneath, you won't know, oh, these are tying them together, just like a video game. Oh, there's a I don't know, there's a map here, or maybe not a map. There's a wooden statue in this room, and a wooden statue way over on the other side of the map, and a wooden statue there. Oh, there's something tying them together. There's a meaning here. So all of these little ways in which the puzzle is being presented to us could not have been seen until now. Even now, we are doing work to figure out some words that have not yet even been defined. Phronesis is a big one. There isn't a definition, well, not one that I've been happy with yet. It's sometimes called practical wisdom. That's not good. Even wisdom is something that we are puzzling over. But here's the thing, the more we puzzle over it, the more it can unlock new insights to us. That's the point. So, we owe a great deal of thanks to Juan Balboa for actually learning the Greek, actually learning how to translate it, for all the work he's done in his many, many years in philosophy, walking the walk and talking the talk, and the support of his wonderful family, who are all in the game of philosophy themselves, to actually have presented this work here with keywords that have never been translated properly, like one of the keywords, daemon. It's so central, so cartoonishly obviously important, but it hasn't been translated until now. Phronesis, he gives us the close enough English translation, because he's translating it for an English audience, but puts it with a capital N, puts it in purple to indicate, hey, look, this doesn't actually just mean mindful. There's a puzzle here, and includes the Greek underneath it. One of the greatest puzzles in this text is what the hell is phronesis, because he is saying here, it is the well-ordered and phronesis soul that can follow her guide. If we have a guide, a daemon, we have to know how to follow it. If we don't, we'll be led away with force and difficulty, and we will struggle much and suffer much in our lives. We don't want to struggle. We don't want to suffer. We don't want to be led away by force, problems, disasters, tragedies, nightmares. We want to be in a harmonious relationship with our guide. There are many branches and circuits that lead us to where we want to go, to the realm of being. That's why Socrates is saying right here, otherwise there would be no need for guides. So if to be able to connect with and follow and hear our guide through the many branches and circuits, to avoid our struggling and our suffering, and escape from human ills, we need phronesis. Even earlier on, we have to, there is no escape from our soul or from our vice, except by becoming as good and phronesis as possible. Again, phronesis is key. We need phronesis. Earlier, he said it's all of this. He says we bring our education and nurture. We have to learn what that is. That's the art of the logos. Again, logos hasn't been translated until now. So, we've lost. And nurture. So if the education, the paideia, is the art of the logos, nurture is the virtues. He said it is the currency. The only page 20 I'm reading it now. The only valid currency that we okay, so he talked about what the virtues are compared to the vices. To master certain pleasures in order to be mastered by other pleasures, that's not virtue. We call it virtue. Oh, look how good he is with his drinking problem. He's become a wonderful gambler because of his temperance or sound-mindedness over his drinking. That's not. That's a fake kind of phronesis from a lack of discipline. And then he goes on to say the only valid currency for which we develop the virtues, the only right exchange for our virtues, our nurturing, the 4 virtues that we've been trying to figure out, the walking the walk. The only currency is phronesis. So the 4 virtues, what are they? Justice, sound-mindedness, courage, and wisdom. Puzzle. He doesn't say wisdom and courage. He says being and virility. We know virility is the power of being courageous, but why is being here instead of wisdom? That was a puzzle. We unlocked a understanding, a deeper, significant understanding of what wisdom is, because he changed it from justice, sound-mindedness, courage, and wisdom, the 4 virtues, to being instead of wisdom. There must be a reason. We have seen that when we look at patterns, there's a pattern of 4. We can apply it to other patterns of 4s to unlock. And we talked about how. As a reminder. All right, I'm back. My OBS crashed. All right, we're not going to talk about this. We've gone through this puzzle. Maybe it's my daemon using force to say, hey, don't solve this puzzle. This is a puzzle for your listeners. What's the puzzle? If these are the 4 virtues, why did he swap being and virility for these 2? Now, of course, the reason we're talking about this now is he's saying the only currency for which we do all these nurture, what do we nurture? The 4 virtues, is so we can exchange them for being, virility, sound-mindedness, and justice. The word dikaios is justice. One Balboa likes to say righteousness. Same thing. The 4 virtues are replaced for justice, righteousness, virility, same, self-phronesis, and temperance or sound-mindedness. One of them changes. So there's a currency, there's an exchange. This is an initiation. This is our purpose. Our purpose is to educate ourselves and practice in these virtues so that we can be initiated into this thing called self-phronesis. It's a mystical rite. If we don't, when we reach the 5th dimension of Hades, we will be in the mud. But if we have purified, number 1, perfected, number 2, we will dwell with the gods. So we have been building a map of what he's been talking about. Where is it? Here. Okay. So if as he is describing, there is a need to zoom in so we can see. There we go. If there is a need to separate from the physical world of becoming, our physical senses, to our soul, the ousia, the 3rd eye. Now, if that also is guided by our daemon to the next realm, Hades, where some stuff happens to us there depending on how well we have done this, learnt the art of the logos and practiced it in the virtues, and specifically got phronesis is what he's saying. So if that's our back and forth reincarnation, if we've done our proper life's work, we complete reincarnation to go beyond. We take with us our education and nurture to be with better humans and gods. We're calling this the sixth dimension. But they're also fellow travelers and guides, which means they're headed somewhere else. We're calling the seventh dimension. So these are our working hypotheses. Fourth dimension of the soul out of the body. The fifth dimension of the place where it can travel to. Sometimes called being, sometimes the unseen, sometimes mythologized with the word Hades. Because it's important to mythologize our understanding too. To remember it and communicate it. Have fun. We do our proper life's work, we can escape this back and forth, coming back as monkeys and donkeys and bees.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
But if we can escape this, there must be a sixth dimension, and if they're going somewhere, there must be a seventh. Now, in the text, he's saying, our purpose is phronesis. Now, we are saying, phronesis has never been translated until now. So this whole text is saying, you need this thing. Sometimes, in the past translations, it's translated as wisdom. Can you see how comically wrong that is? Because he's saying, these four virtues, wisdom changes. So you can't call phronesis wisdom, because it's the currency you exchange wisdom for. And they've also talked about another way to describe our movement is to go from where do we write it? Here. If we are a happy snowman, so when our desires are following our outward seeking, so soul has three parts. Lover of learning is being motivated by your planning and reasoning part. Lover of riches is this snowman upside down. The bottom part is desires are in control. This is why wars are fought. And when our leaders are these sorts of people. Wars are fought for riches. Lover of fame, this weird snowman here where the middle part of his soul is ruling. He said, if you're a lover of the body, philosomatos, we are either a lover of riches, philokrimatos, or lover of fame, philotimos. Now we want to be a lover of learning, a right side up snowman. But that lover of learning has to become a lover of wisdom. So one of our puzzles is what makes learning into wisdom. And Socrates is saying, this was my second search for causes. Don't understand the physical world, understand the cause of it. So we've said, hey, logos is part of it. Being is part of it. But then even philosophy, wisdom, if this is love of wisdom, we just read that our initiation, the thing that we can get, that we can take with us, is when wisdom changes into phronesis. So Socrates says, this was our text here. This is the exchange for phronesis, the rite of initiation, the only valid currency. But he also says, so here's our section where he said, by the way, if you're a lover of body, you're a lover of riches or a lover of honors, one or both of these, you're not a philosopher. But he also says, hey, us philosophers really become lovers of here, page 16. Right, lovers of the body and not true phronesis, that's our cause for war, civil discord and battles. And if we don't purify ourselves, even if we do have time for philosophy, it comes clamoring in, pouring in a clamor, drives us out of our mind. We want to behold the knowability of self-realities with the self-soul. Then we will attain to that which we desire, which we claim to be lovers of, phronesis. So those are our three kinds of lovers. The negative side, lovers of the body, lovers of riches, lovers of fame. And the good side, lover of learning, which becomes lover of wisdom when you direct your learning to that which is universally understandable, the logos, not opinion. And understanding the realm of being, not the physical world, which is in change. Now, as a byproduct, we will be able to understand the physical world better. Of course, Socrates is able to use his art of the paradigm, realm of being, to recognize the deviations that follow in the realm of becoming. Just like a doctor with the art of medicine can recognize the deviations in the many different human bodies. You will never meet a perfectly healthy body, but you can study it in medicine. You need to, so you can recognize the deviations. Because as Socrates says, the art recognizes that all human beings are somewhere between the ideal and the most worthless. What we're recognizing as our problems, which lead us to fate, and the art of the logos leading us to destiny. The same art can judge both. So, being is the ideal. Just like, for example, in music, if you learn about this, you'll recognize, oh, this is where the diatonic scale comes from. This is why the three fundamental relationships are the perfect octave, the perfect fifth, and the perfect fourth. You can't figure it out by looking at the notes themselves. You can create hypotheses, but if you study the realm of being, you can see the ideal that when you do look at the physical expressions, you'll go, oh, that's why it works. Not only that, but by studying the ideal in being, now music is one thing, but we want to know the reality and what's more meaningful. Why are we here? What's our purpose? The studying of the logos, that which is not opinion but universal, anyone can play and should. The art of the logos directed towards being the ideal. When you can verify that being in direct experience, that's called nous, and that is needed because that translates into phronesis. So lover of learning becomes lover of wisdom, philosophy, which becomes phronesis, lover of phronesis. So true philosophers seek phronesis or are lovers of phronesis. Now that's cool because we can understand our development. We can understand why Socrates said, hey, I wanted to learn about why we are here, and I found that all of the teachers were rubbish. Anaxagoras talked about mind being a cause. That made sense. But he didn't really get into understanding mind or the cause of mind. We can understand why Socrates is talking about that. Because being is in mind, or is the ousia, the nature of mind itself. All of the things that mind apprehends, what's good, what's beautiful, what's just. We know these are causes because we try and do what's best, what's good, what's just, what's beautiful. So now we can understand because we see it as, oh, that's lover of learning, into lover of philosophy. And we also will find that most teachers only talk about physical causes, bones and sinews. But if lover of learning was never translated, and philosophy has to go to lover of phronesis, if lover of phronesis is not translated as lover of phronesis, but lover of wisdom or lover of knowledge or something else, then we will never ever understand what the hell he's talking about. We will never get the puzzle. We will never get the understanding. We will never be able to discover a question and then discover the answer. We will never be able to pick up what Socrates is laying down. And he says, if you don't, all of the problems will happen to your soul and to humanity. If you do, you have what you need to do your proper work. Secondarily, it'll be convincing to others, which is great. And you'll be able to artfully use it to benefit your friends as I am doing. But more importantly, you will be able to reach being Bring that into your education and nurture, gain phronesis, take that with you to the 6th dimension, meet better men and gods to go on a proper journey, do proper philosophy, and maybe even reach the 7th. And maybe beyond, who knows? In other words, we can understand why no one's talking about it now. This was the question. Why is no one talking about this? Why is this going to seem weird and odd? Why are not the clever people like Dawkins and Ricky Gervais maybe talking about this? Why are they so? Because we haven't had any of these terms translated properly. So we owe a great deal of gratitude to Juan Balboa and his family for giving us this. We're going to be gentle with people like Dawkins or Gervais or our friends who say, oh, I'm atheist. There can't be anything beyond the physical world. Because the people who talk about the spiritual realms are all irrational, talking about opinions and beliefs. You're right. You're right. But don't just listen to them. Listen to Socrates. You don't have to have terrible false opinions about the nature of the divine from 1,000 different kooky religions that are all in conflict with each other. That's just opinion. Go beyond opinion to understanding. Develop it as an art. That's the education of the art of the logos. Practice it. That's the virtues. By the way, once you have the virtues and you're learning the art, if you do have the experience of a higher dimension, you might be able to integrate your experience and get phronesis. That is a state that you trade all your virtues in for. And it's a kind of learning that you can take with you. Therefore, if phronesis is the kind of learning you can take with you, it's probably what we're here for. In fact, Socrates says, we go into the realm of the invisible possessing nothing except our education and nurture, and we will only escape when we become as good and phronesis as possible. And nurture, phronesis, our education leading to phronesis. So phronesis is key. It's key. And it's been mistranslated in comically bad ways up until now. So, all of this is important to see. To encourage ourselves to keep going, have courage, be virile, to recognize why people who we would otherwise trust and would be dear to us might disagree with us, might try to, persuade us to do something physical instead. Hey, dig a hole, earn money, get famous. Why people we might otherwise look up to, like Dawkins and Gervais for some people, are not talking about this. Why even our experts are not talking about this. And why we've dropped the ball. Why it's taken us 2,500 years to pick up what Socrates laid down. So, good for you. And encourage yourself. And recognize people who are disagreeing and why they're disagreeing. And invite others to the game. And make this gesture with your hands. Like this. Come on.
Flibbity jibbity non.
What in the hell? Come on, man.
This one.
Come on, man.
It's like, come on, man. Get into philosophy. Socrates is describing every problem you're going to have. And humanity will have. Come on, man.
Come on, man.
And he offered you a way out. A way to purify your problems, escape fate. And a way to reach your highest goals and destiny. Get into it.
Come on, man.
Say this with your friends and do this. Come on, man. Hey, come on, man. You can do it. This gesture here.
Come on, man.
Come on, man. So, important to realize. Now, all of that, dozens of puzzles, dozens of questions, dozens of all new insights that we have never been able to see until now, are needed to make sense of this next part, which is even more confusing and mental and like rational. Mental in a good way. Intelligible, but seems mental, seems crazy. So if all of those things that we've only been able to see now have been inaccessible, and all of those things are needed to make sense of this next part, you can see how the reason why this next part is kind of ignored or glossed over or mentioned briefly with a shrug by people who are interested in Platonic philosophy. I don't know what this next part's about. Which means we might be covering new ground. Hopefully we are. Hopefully we're going to see something fantastic. But we do have a bit of a map with us now. So again, to use a video game analogy, because video games are cool, we have developed this map. All right, so here's our planet Earth. Where's my pen? Here's our planet Earth. The proper practice of philosophy is the art and practice of dying and being dead. So that's the fourth dimension. But then we have to collect ourselves together, both now and in the future. Practice being self by self, or whatever that means, question mark. So there's some sort of activity that we have to do here to get to this realm of, maybe that's the realm of being, that we enter into somehow, but then we leave to reincarnate back into a bee. Socrates said, depending on how we've nurtured our soul, back into a bee or a donkey or a goat or a cat or a hawk or a rooster or an elephant, or maybe a regular mundane person who has a robot, and sometimes the robot will step on your toe and you'll scream. Okay, so he's already talked about this, but he's also said there is a way of completing your life's work and going beyond. Take with you your art of the logos through dianoia, understanding. That culminates in nous, which you can integrate into your nurture to get this phronesis thing, and you can develop all that as an art. So art defines all of it, and you can meet these other dudes. Socrates is encouraging us to do all this so we can meet him as quick as we can. Better humans and gods who have completed their work here. Later on in the text, he calls them fellow travelers and guides. So even these people outside of the fourth and fifth dimension must be going somewhere, so we can see that there's a seventh. So this is a map from reading the text that we're taking with us to navigate this next section. So this would be like the third time we've reviewed and prepared. So hopefully it's going to be useful. Okay. The earth is a sphere being in the middle of heaven, and if it is in no need of air or another necessary element to keep it from falling, since the overall likeness of the self of heaven in relation to it and the equal balance of the self of earth are sufficient to maintain self. Here's our word sufficient again, that's just been coming up all the way through. For an equally balanced resource placed in the middle of something that is like it, here's our idea of likeness, will have no tendency to incline more or less in any direction, but will continue to remain uninclined in the same way. All right. So here's our picture. It's in the middle, it's in balance, it's like heaven. So therefore we've got this earth here in the middle. There's our earth in the middle there. Let's just say, get a bit bigger. This is the first point of which I'm persuaded. So there's no need for air. let's conclude that as well. No. Oh, so this is in heaven. And there's no need for air or other necessary element. In here to keep it where it is. Okay, let's keep going. Simmias says, rightly so indeed. Well, if Simmias thinks so, then it must be true. I think he's agreeing with the principle. That if you were in the middle of something of which you're like, you wouldn't fall out of balance. Interesting, because that's something important. We are being like Usia and like pure phronesis, and we want to remain the same way. So we don't want to fall into our body. Self-imprisonment is the worst kind of imprisonment. So he talked about how if we aren't a lover of contention, but actually doing our life's work the right way, we can use that state of phronesis, that self-state of self-phronesis, as a judge as to whether or not the logos under discussion can maintain it. So we can remain in balance using phronesis as a kind of guide, which is cool because if we're going to, incarnate out of our body, it'd be handy to have something to guide us whether or not the logos is the right path. So, interesting principle. Second, any region of it, I'm going to use the word it. Now, we've already talked about one way of unlocking the dimensions or levels of meaning of the text is because of the word self. Is through the word self. The word self here is a triad. Altos is the word. Again, we've only been able to play the game in the last 5 years. Hats off to Balboa.
Wow.
Because he puts the word self in there, gives it a capital S, puts it in a different color so we know that there's a meaning here. And that meaning is it's a triad, like many other triads we've discovered. This board is full of triangles, which is part of the game. Now, the triad for Altos is it should be able to read as the particular, like the word it in English, the honorific, which extends it to a selfer. So even the word honorific, another way of saying an honorific is to say self-er. So right in the word self-er is the word self. Let's spell that out better. Self-er term. The terms that we've been on the hunt for, by the way. And of course, if this realm of mind is the cause of the particulars in our physical world, then there's also a cause of that. That's the one self. That's what we really want. So maybe that's the seventh dimension that we're after. Maybe. So we can unlock the different levels of meaning by reading self as all three, but I find it handy to stick with it as much as possible the first read through. Sometimes I'll use this one when it's obvious he's pointing to being, like self-beauty. I won't use it as a particular example of beauty, so I'll usually play with these two when I read. But of course, there will be a higher reading. And I recommend going to the YouTube channel and checking out the read along of the first hypothesis of Parmenides to understand what the heck this thing is. Because this was what Socrates' teacher said was his philosophy of himself. And this was the quote. So, Parmenides says, "We must play a reality-based game. I must begin from myself and the hypothesis of myself, and whether one is or whether one is not, what must the results be?" The first hypothesis is his hypothesis about himself, which he calls the one self. So you can check out that if you're into it. Now, there are other triads that we have here that we could pick up and put on top to see if it sheds new light. That's the game. But let's keep going. So here's let's highlight likeness because that's important. Okay, the region of it is so I'm gonna say it sometimes. The region of it is large, and we will live as far as the Pillars of Hercules and up to the river Phasis. So we have some terms. Let's keep them in, let's see, green. There are something called Pillars of Hercules. And there is the river Phasis. The boundary of Europe and Asia within a small section, living around the Mediterranean Sea, just as ants or frogs live around a pool. It's a metaphor. And many other people live in many sections in this region. There are many valleys in every direction around the earth of every kind and shape and size, into which water and mist and air have flowed together. But the self of earth, being pure, is laid up in the pure heaven where the stars are established. Okay, so I don't know whether the Pillars of Heracles and the river Phalis is him starting with the everyday physical world. Our translator is saying that's the boundary between Europe and Asia. And just as ants and frogs live around a pool, humans tend to live around rivers and lakes and so maybe he's talking about the physical. But the self of earth, so again, honorific here. The self of earth is pure and laid up in the pure heaven. So the earth has its own soul or selfhood, where the stars are established. Okay, so we know what the heaven is. It's something like space. But there is a pure heaven, so there's a soul of space. So there's stars established. There are stars here. Now, what else can we recognize? Well, we've talked about our proper work is to make ourselves pure. So this word pure ties in to what we've been reading. So if there's a pure heaven, that might be ousia. And if the earth is made pure or is pure by nature, maybe it's already there. Or maybe this is a guide. We want to be made pure so we can be in the pure heaven with the stars. So these are hypotheses that we make and questions we make as we go. So where the stars are established, which the majority of those who usually speak about these subjects call the ether. Now, back in Socrates' time, these people who speak about the stars hypothesized that there must be a kind of atmosphere in space, just like there's air in Earth, the atmosphere we call it. Well, there must be some atmosphere in space keeping the planets from falling away. So they called that ether. Now, I think the current scientific theory is space is a vacuum and there is no ether. But that's kind of incidental because he's saying we don't need ether. We don't need we're in no need of air or any other necessary element. Because it's through likeness and being perfectly ordered that we stay in being. Now again, do we see a metaphor to our soul? He is trying to pass on how we can develop the art of the Logos in understanding, but also in experience. Those are the two. Definition, demonstration. Understanding and experience. Dianoia and nous. Education and nurture. So, through likeness, we don't need an extra person. We don't need an extra thing. We maintain it through likeness. Surely then, these are the sediment thereof, and they always flow into the valleys of earth. What are? The ether? But we who dwell in the valleys of self, of it, of earth, or self-earth, are unaware of this. Okay, so maybe it works there better. So we who dwell in the valleys of earth are unaware of it, and we think we live above, upon the earth, just as if someone who would be living at the bottom, in the middle of the open sea, would think they are living upon the surface of the sea, and by seeing the sun and other heavenly bodies through the water, would believe the sea to be the heavens. But by being slow and frail, they will never arrive upon the surface of the sea. So, 2 levels of metaphor. Well, actually, maybe 1. Just as we think we live on the actual surface of the earth, it's by us being slow and frail that we don't actually lift our head out of the sea. Just as someone who lived their life underwater might think they're on the surface of the sea, but they're not actually on the surface. Curious. Let's draw it. So somebody under the sea. Under the sea. Oh. The sea. Someone under the sea looks up and sees the sun. They'll think the sea is the atmosphere or the ether. They see the sun and the other heavenly bodies through the water. Okay, so the other heavenly bodies, so let's go with some stars. They would believe the sea to be the heavens. Sea equals heavens? Question mark? There's a little man looking up at the sun and the other heavenly bodies, and because he is frail and slow, he thinks that the sea is the heavens. This is his thought bubble. Nor have they beheld the sight of the region here, which compares to theirs. Happens to be much more pure and more beautiful. Nor would they have heard of it from anyone who has seen it. Okay, so there's more here, which actually brings in what we were talking about from Ricky Gervais and stuff, and Richard Dawkins. There is a surface of the earth. Let's draw the sea here. And there's a surface of the earth, and there's an earth dweller here. And this person never meets this person. So this person has an A. Not lifted head out of the sea. They haven't beheld sight of earth. Of surface of it, surface. And they haven't heard about it from anyone who's seen it. Heard about surface from anyone who has seen it. That's what we've been talking about today. What do people like? Oh my goodness. So this is what I just drew. They haven't lifted their head out from beheld the surface. They haven't heard about, they haven't lifted their head out of the ocean, so out of the sea. Out of the sea. They haven't beheld sight of the surface. And they haven't even heard about the surface from anyone else who has seen it. They've never met this guy. This guy here. So they think they're seeing the they would believe the sea to be the heavens. So they think the sea is the heavens. Okay? I am convinced our experience is truly the same of this. For by living in a certain valley of the earth, so we're in a valley, we think we live in the upper region. And we call the air heaven, as if the stars made their journey through this heaven. This then is the same because our weakness and slowness. So we are living in a certain valley of the earth. We got a mountain to climb. Because of our weakness and slowness, relative to what? Well, what's he been saying? Education, what's that? Art of the logos. Nurture, what's that? The virtues. Both of those two things come together for phronesis. So, how weak and slow we are at doing that. It is not possible for us to pass through to the upper limit of the air. If ever one would arrive at this upper limit or fly up by becoming winged. Now, becoming winged is, anybody who's read other texts from Plato recognizes this as a theme. He likes this metaphor. Of course, it is in mythology. Becoming winged is like Hermes has, I think, wings on his feet. There's the fable of the guy who made wings and flew up to heaven. Socrates uses it to talk about our souls becoming winged if we spend our life in philosophy and we don't succumb to the different pleasures of the physical body and nail our souls to it. So here he's using that metaphor again. By lifting her head above the air, she would behold, just as here fish would see on rising from the sea, things here in the same way they would behold something of the realities there. So, now we have a metaphor for just as a fish can stick his head above the water. I don't know how to draw a fish. Oh, he's got like a little, don't they have little, they have fins, don't they? Okay, just as a fish can stick his head above the water, so too can we. So that's is to us. Is to us. Becoming wicked and fly above the air to see the realities there. As if nature. Okay, so as to our soul. Becoming winged or winged and seeing the realities above earth. So let's got earth here. Perfect. Look how good I am at drawing earth. And there's some stuff here. So this is our soul flying above with wings. We would see a fish sticking his head above water. This is interesting because he is communicating something we don't have experience of, or rather, we don't remember experience of, through analogy. This is one of the principles we've been talking about, as above, so below. As the below, the fish sticking his head out the sea, the terms may vary, but the relations stay the same. So too, it can be used to understand what it would be like to have wings of the soul, stick your head above the physical plane, and see the true self of Earth. We think we're on the surface of Earth. We're not. We're in a valley of Earth. Just as a fish or that sea person thinks that they are on the surface, they're not. They're under the water. He's trying to communicate what we don't yet know through analogy. Now he said, by the way, earlier in the text, he said, by the way, all physical things are like that. They serve a purpose to remind us, because all learning is remembering. So when you see two sticks, they look equal. By the way, look closer. Are they really equal? Well, of course not. Nothing is actually equal. Oh, then where did you learn equal from? Those two sticks are there to remind you, just as a beautiful person or painting or puppy is to remind you of beauty itself. Hopefully you see enough beautiful things in your life to go, wait a minute. Beauty can't be there because it's also there and there. What's the second search for causes? You're not beautiful because your bones are well proportioned. There must be a cause of beauty itself that I remember somehow. So this is a similar principle. It's helping us to remember. And we thank him. Thank you, Socrates. Okay. By lifting her head above the air, they would behold as if fish would... Okay. Lifting our head above the air, just as here fish would see on rising from the sea things here. So the fish is seeing things here, just as we are seeing things there. The reality's there. Okay? In the same way we would behold something, the reality's there, as if nature were efficient enough to keep contemplating them, as if they're nature, they would realize that there truly is that heaven and there truly is that life, just as there truly is that earth. I see. Okay. So this is the other level. So just as these people, or these fish or people, truly see this heaven and the light, so the sea person compared to the regular person, you're not seeing the true light, you're seeing it through the sea, as the land person is. Just as he is saying, if we can stick our head above the air in a similar way, we see the realities, and we also see truly is that earth. So we see the true earth. true earth. Okay, we see the realities, which includes the true earth. By contemplating them. Efficient. So here's our word efficient. Efficient has been coming up in each of the dialectics. When we go through the dialectic, which seems to be the practice of the philosophy, both to yourself in your own dialectics, in your mythology, and also to your friends, it concludes with, was it efficient? Now he is tying in what makes it really efficient. We said, oh, it needs to be efficient enough to change your mind. But then Seebees came along and said, oh yeah, I kind of don't distrust. A lot of people would agree with you. So that wasn't efficient. Socrates said we have to keep discussing these selves until we efficiently get there. We wouldn't seek any further. In fact, let's find that. It's a few pages back. So this was what whether or not the soul was not only immortal but indestructible. Seebees was the one with the myth. He is afraid that when he dies, his soul will be destroyed because it's not immortal or indestructible. He said, well, of course the immortal can't accept destruction because nothing would be indestructible if the immortal wouldn't. And then he said, every human being would agree to that. Therefore, I don't distrust. So he's still at level of trust. Simmias comes in and said, well, I don't care what people think. I have a low valuation of human frailty. I don't care if everyone would follow that. I know it's not sufficient. Socrates says we have to thoroughly discuss selves in a sufficient way. Here's our word sufficient again. If we follow the logos as far as a human is able, the self will become clear. We would seek no further. So this is calling back this section here. We need to use the dialectic until it's sufficient. What makes it sufficient? We will find the self of it, the self-earth. In reality, we follow the logos. How? Through the dialectic, to when it becomes sufficient. How do we know? The self becomes clear. What's the problem with associating with bodies? We think the body is most clear and real. That's the problem. What's really clear is not our physical senses, it's the self itself, in reality. So when it becomes clear, you'll seek no further. So it's calling back this. This is our standard for the art of the logos. Now, that was page 86, I think. Oh, and we're only a few pages lower. Oh, okay, that wasn't too far away. Right, so this is the introduction to where we're at. So very, very early, very close. Okay, brings back efficient. We have to efficiently follow the logos. There it is, sufficiently. Same root. Until we can contemplate them. What's contemplation? Again, we're told to, these keywords we have to stitch together. So copy that. Where was the other time he used contemplation? Again, this is how we solve this is how we play. We can only do it now. Thank you, Juan Balboa and his family. We've seen it twice before. The other time he used the word contemplation was when Socrates was absorbed in self for a long time, contemplating about something. And then he replied. So this was, okay, so after there was the objection to his doctrine, the soul is destroyed because it's a byproduct, like harmony. or we don't outlive our last incarnation like the jacket. Socrates went into a state of contemplation. And then he said, it's no thoughtless matter of what you seek, Cebes, for the cause of generation and destruction, is our soul destroyed, needs to be wholly and thoroughly investigated. Thus I, if you wish, will give to you my personal experience concerning selves. Thereafter, should something that I say come to light as useful, make use of it to persuade us of what you think, of what you say. So, tying it together, contemplation. So he is giving us his personal experience of what it's like to stick his head above the water of the physical world to see the true self of Earth, his personal experience. So we can see the cause of generation and destruction. What's generation and destruction? The things that we perceive through the physical senses. Everything in the world is either growing, generating, or dying. That's why we call it the realm of becoming. That's why we can't know anything for certain. It's not eternal and immortal and graspable through consciousness itself. So what's the cause of the physical Earth? The reality of Earth, the self-Earth. He is saying you need to contemplate it and then use it. He's going to give you his personal experience. Use it so it's sufficient, so you can be absorbed in contemplation, and then hopefully, thumbs up, use your art of the logos to understand it and structure your understanding so you can persuade us. It's not a solo game. You're not solo questing a boss. You are helping your friends. That's the art. The art of medicine isn't just to help yourself. Thumbs up. But also it's a kind of practice that you can bring with you into the sixth dimension. Okay, so the meaning of what we read in this mysterious analogy of fish people and sticking our head out of the valley of Earth to see the self-Earth. Of course, it never made sense to anyone else. And they said,
Come on, man. Come on, man.
And they said,
What in the heck are we talking about here?
And they concluded,
Flibbity-gibbity nonsense.
They thought it was flibbity-gibbity nonsense. And they would rather engage in their physical pleasures, and they should have said,
I don't want to eat a monkey.
I don't want to eat a monkey. Of course it was confusing to them, because they didn't have the exact Greek, so they could weave in the other instances of the word to solve the puzzle. It's a game. It's a play. Reality-based game, as Parmenides said. Okay, what's the other time he used the word contemplation? Page 17. So he used it or demonstrated it, but also when he was defining his doctrine. Contemplation, here we go. A true philosopher disdains the body in the valley and flees from it, for she seeks to become self according to self. Here is our honorific, seeing the self of yourself, the self of the soul, the self of the earth. So it has come to light. Interesting, the word light is being brought up again. So, didn't we say there was a certain self-justice and self-beauty and self-good? Have you seen that all of these beings are not seen with the eyes? Of course not. You grasp selves through, any of these selfer terms, do you grasp them through the body senses? Greatness itself, health itself, strength itself, and in one logos, the ousia. Later on, he says it's the hyparctus. It's all the same ousia. The ousia of all the others, whatever each self happens to be. Self-beauty, self-earth. Okay, you don't see it through the senses. Accordingly then, that which is most true of selves, including the self-earth and the self-soul, is contemplated. There's our contemplated. Not through the body, but whoever prepares themselves and most accurately dianoia, there's our logos and dialectic, each self they investigate. This person will approach the closest to the nous, the direct intuitive knowledge of each being, the noesis. Okay, so you approach the being through dianoia. That's a purification, a liberating oneself from the body so you can acquire truth and phronesis. So there's our phronesis again. So it's not only is it needed to seek the earth, it's needed for phronesis. So going all the way back down to where we are, all of a sudden, because we are playing the game, weaving it together with our sewing needle of infinite truths, our snit, we can make sense of why he's talking about this and what he's meaning. Okay, so efficient dialectic, contemplate, that's that noesis, to see self as self, separated from the body, prepared through dianoia. We would realize that is truly that heaven and that light, just as truly is that earth. So he's talking about his own personal experience to tell us what would make the dialectic sufficient. Does it lead to contemplation? How do you know? Are you seeing the realities themselves and not like a fish looking through water, seeing this earth, but the true earth? Really amazingly crafted, isn't it? Now, I have seen another person communicate on the fly with this level of remarkable relationship between parts and puzzles, and you need to sew it together. It's baffling to see in real time, because how do you know that this thing is going to pay off later? I think that person somehow is operating from the self, or the logos is coming in, because it's a non-linear approach to time that allows these sorts of people like Socrates to communicate in this way. It is baffling and amazing to see. And one of my frustrations is when I've seen people do this in real time, I point to the other people, hey, did you see what he did there? The start was needed at the end and it was woven together, and only if you did this and did this and did this could you see what he meant when he said this. And I get like blank stares, but doesn't matter. We are seeing it and we are pulling it apart because we really value what he is passing on, and there's reasons that we value it. So, high level of artistry and functioning of Socrates before his death. Let's keep going. What a man. Okay. Back in the text. 4. On the one hand, this earth and these stones and the whole region here are corruptible and are being thoroughly, eaten away, just as things in the sea are by the salt water. And nothing worth mentioning grows in the sea, or as one might say, nothing that is perfect. So this is our standard. Perfect. But on the other hand, there are caves and sand and an extraordinary amount of slime and mud. Notice mud is bobbery, I think it is. This is the same word mentioned earlier when if we reach the fifth dimension or the realm of being or Hades, without going through phronesis and the art of the logos, we will end up in the mud or the barbarous bog. Volvory? No. And Volvory. I thought it was B. I think it's B in the ancient Greek. But sometimes, I think in the modern Greek, it's V. because the text translation of Google says Volvery, but I think it's B. Bolbury, barbaric bog. Dirt. A ball of dirt. Mire, clay, moist earth, filth. Yeah. Mud. I wish there was a pronunciation for it. Bolbody. Anyway, Bolbody. So there is a Dragon Ball Z villain called Barbody. Irrelevant. Okay, so you will. There is an extraordinary amount of slime and mud, mud. So this is where we end up. So again, tying this word back in a capital letter to. So you see Bolbody in the Greek. See it there. Now if we type in bog, we can recognize. Oh, here it is. Boboro was used before. When was it used? If we don't go through this rite of initiation to turn our virtues into phronesis, we are uninitiated, we are unaccomplished in our purpose. So here's our meaning of life. We will lie outstretched in the Bolbody, barbarous bog or mud, whereas one who reaches the fifth dimension, purified and perfected, will dwell with the gods. So maybe even beyond the fifth dimension. Because we're escaping the cycles of reincarnation. Therefore, as the mysteries say, many are the staff bearers, few are the actual mystics. So, not only is it the meaning of life, it's the true spiritual tradition, according to Socrates. Which makes sense. Like, one of the things we've been saying about what philosophy is compared to how it's misrepresented is it's universal. It's not opinion. It's not Kant versus Hegel versus... Who cares what these people thought? Like, really, who cares? Wouldn't we rather know the truth? If there is a truth, then it doesn't matter what your opinions are. Well, it matters in the sense that you should be able to judge your opinions based on the truth to see where you have a unsuspected problem or false belief and what you need to do to learn to go to the next level. And if we have friends, we can practice the art to help. So of course there'd be one spiritual tradition, if there is an understanding of it, or one philosophy. And that's another thing we have to overcome. When we say this is Platonic philosophy or Socratic philosophy, it gives the impression that we mean it's one philosophy among many. So we call it Platonic to distinguish it among many, but there is no such thing as a Platonic philosophy. As it's been said, if you use your mind to know the mind, you will reinvent Plato. Because learning is remembering. It's not a creation, it's a discovery. So sometimes we call it the perennial philosophy, which means like the parent philosophy. So yeah, so again, we're making sense of why he said many are the staff bearers, but the true practice of spirituality is philosophy.
You're a wizard, Harry.
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
Wow!
Okay. So there are many caves and sand and slime and mud, wherever there should be earth also, and being in no way whatsoever worthy of comparison with our beauties. In the caves and sand is full of mud. Nothing is perfect. Everything is corruptible in this whole region here. But we want the beauties. We want my precious beauties.
Sneaky little hobbitses.
Okay? But those realities and their turn will appear far more superior compared to our region. Make sense? And if there is further need to tell a tale, O Simius, for it is worth hearing, which happens to be about the realities upon the upper earth and the upper heaven. There is need to tell a tale. About the realities on the upper earth and upper heaven. Good?
Wow.
Simius responds, but truly, O Socrates, we will indeed be pleased to hear of this tale. Okay, let's take a break here. We've seen a lot already. But also importantly, we're seeing what it takes to unpack the meaning, find the key words, stitch the pieces together, create a hypothesis to explain whether or not it fits and how it fits, and keep going. Keep following the logos until it's efficient enough so you can contemplate them yourself. That's what we're doing it for. By weaving it together, we're playing, we're following the logos. By structuring these things together, we are doing the dialectic. That's dianoia. What makes it sufficient? We can contemplate. Keep going until you find your head sticking out above the physical. We are purifying ourselves. And what are we going to see when we do? We will see the realities, we will see the beauties, we will see things that can be perfect, we will contemplate them, and we will see the upper earth, or the self of earth. The self of earth and the pure heavens. This is what we're doing it for. This is how we're doing it. It's fun. It's different. We're seeing what happens if we don't do it. We're seeing why it hasn't been done until now. And we're having fun and taking our curiosity and wonder with us. Socrates says we need to hear more about it. About what? About the realities. So now that he's told us where we are in the valleys. So far he's said, okay, look, you are this guy. This is you. This is you and me. We are this guy. We're under the water. We think we're actually looking at the sun and the stars in the heavens. We're not. We've never lifted our head out of the sea. We've never beheld sight of the real world on the real surface of the real earth. And we haven't even heard about it from anyone who's seen it. And we're understanding why that's the case. Yeah, because we've only been able to read Socrates now. He's someone. And now we are becoming someone who has heard about it. So he's saying, it's like this, like a fish sticking his head out to see this earth. So too, we want to become winged to see the realities, the beauties, the ideal, the self earth. But we haven't seen it yet. But now we can talk to someone who has, and we know our standard for how long do we keep playing this game until this happens. And it's the one true spiritual practice, says Socrates, so maybe it's worth playing. Interesting, it's fun, it's rational, thank goodness. That's what one of the huge appeals to me. Finally, someone talking rational about the cause of human problems. Thankfully, we have the Balboa text. Thankfully, Socrates shared this with us. And now that he's told us where we are, we're in the valleys. We're in the valleys. We're in here. We're in the valleys. We're not on the surface. This is us here in the valleys. We want to make the journey to the surface. Therefore, we know where we are. We're stuck. We're down. We're low. We're like fish in the sea. But we know where we're heading. Therefore, it's worth telling a tale, and it's worth us hearing and applying this level of reflection and understanding about the realities. Where are they? Upon the upper earth and under the upper heaven. So maybe this upper heaven could be a dimension above the fourth and fifth. And the upper earth sounds like the fourth or fifth itself. So it's worth hearing them. And now he's saying, hey, yeah, you're stuck. You need to see the truth. So good reason for us to keep reading. So huge cliffhanger. On that cliffhanger, thank you for joining me today. I hope you're excited to hear these stories about what it's like on the real earth, under the real heavens, and why it's important. I hope you're excited, and I hope you're seeing more about why this is new and why it's worth sticking at it, having courage. It's not often talked about, but maybe it will someday. And hey, even if you get there, you'll find good friends and guides, fellow travelers and guides if you do it. So keep at it, stay strong, stay courageous, keep nurturing, keep wondering. And I hope to see you next time. Thank you so much for joining me. Feel free to join on Twitch. I also live stream on YouTube at the same time, so you can join this live streams and ask questions, send reflections in real time on Twitch or YouTube. You can see the videos. They're posted for free on YouTube. You can join the Discord, find the free text below. You can support on Patreon if you would like and have the means. And I hope to see you next time. Thank you so much.